We also have not found a gene to make people biologically predisposed to be criminals. The supporters of race and intelligence would say, but we have. The warrior gene. Alright, let's talk about the warrior gene. The warrior gene refers to monoamine oxidase A. This enzyme breaks down neurotransmitters in the brain such as dopamine, I pronounce it as masochist. And yes, I can pronounce ask correctly. People like this person come off as condescending assholes when they use slight grammatical errors to prove a point that the person is stupid. It also hurts your claim if you use this as a reason to believe that black people have low IQ. As I just pointed out, I'm capable of correcting my errors, which makes low IQ less of a biological reality and more about knowledge. I can't take your position seriously if you use this kind of reasoning. It's childish in nature. Of course, IQ can be affected by our biology, but it's not in the way these people want it to be. We also have not found a gene to make people biologically predisposed to be criminals. The supporters of race and intelligence would say, but we have. The warrior gene. Alright, let's talk about the warrior gene. The warrior gene refers to monoamine oxidase A. This enzyme breaks down neurotransmitters in the brain such as dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Having high levels of monoamine oxidase A will mean that you will have less neurotransmitters, and having low levels of monoamine oxidase A will mean you will have more neurotransmitters in the brain. Producing high and low levels of monoamine oxidase A will cause negative effects on you. There's multiple alleles of monoamine oxidase A, which are 2' repeat, 3' repeat, 4' repeat, and 5' repeat. The 2' repeat allele will create the lowest levels of monoamine oxidase A production, and the 4' repeat allele will create the highest levels of monoamine oxidase A production. Those with the 2' repeat allele are more prone to violence, likely to be risk takers, and more likely to take revenge. Someone I had a discussion with on this topic said that the overwhelming majority of black people have the 2' repeat allele, so I decided to look at the percentages. In this study, only 5.5% of African American men carried the 2' repeat allele compared to the 0.1% of Caucasian men and 0.00067% of Asian men. 5.5 is not an overwhelming majority. The 3' repeat allele produces low levels of monoamine oxidase A as well, but it sits somewhere between the 2' repeat and 4' repeat alleles. 59% of African American men had the 3' repeat allele, 56% of Maori men had it, 54% of Chinese men had it, and 34% of Caucasian men had it. 59% is a majority, but not an overwhelming majority. If you happen to be a person who produced low levels of monoamine oxidase A, there is a drug you can take to increase those levels. It's called pregnenolone. It's been proven by these studies to increase your levels of monoamine oxidase A and reduce aggression. It's purchasable on Amazon. Estrogen also decreases aggression, which is why women are less likely to have the 2' repeat and 3' repeat alleles. If you think about taking this, I suggest consulting your doctor about it first. Everyone's biology is different, so I wouldn't advise people to take it when you didn't need it in the first place. And you should consult your doctor to see if you may have potential side effects to this drug. This is what I meant when I say the supporters of this position never offer a solution. They just use any information they can find to demonize black people. Not one person who agrees with this offered a solution as I was commenting to them. It wasn't so hard to look for a solution, but they chose not to because I don't think they have good intentions when they say black people have low IQ and are violent savages because of their genes. My advice to you is if you don't want to seem like an asshole, try coming up with ways to solve the problem, not point fingers and demonize a group of people because you think your race is superior to theirs. It's so immature. I want to talk about the studies done on monoamine oxidase A and why are people more prone to be aggressive when they produce low levels of it. These studies seem to suggest it's because of a gene-environmental circumstance interaction. Just because you have the gene, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed to behave aggressively. It seems certain conditions must be present. That's why these studies say increased risk or probability instead of guarantees. Those with low levels of monoamine oxidase A are more prone to be aggressive because they could be socially or emotionally hyposensitive and care less about harming others, or because they are hypersensitive and they tend to overreact to negative social experiences. The relationship between monoamine oxidase A and aggression is likely due to a heightened sensitivity to negative socio-economical experiences. The supporters of this position try to make it seem that the gene alone is what makes the person aggressive, but that's not the case. It seems to make the person more prone to aggression when certain conditions are met. I'm quite sure there's other genes involved here, so focusing on this one gene alone may not give you the big picture. The study seems to suggest that more research is needed and tells the reader to exercise appropriate caution when interpreting the exact values in certain studies. This one mentions that pooling the 2-repeat and 3-repeat alleles together was a bit misguided because when combined, the genotype was unrelated to the odds of shooting or stabbing someone. That's because the 2-repeat allele has independent effects, while the 3-repeat allele has effects when paired with an environmental risk factor. The genes seem to make the person more likely to act with aggression when certain conditions are met, not an absolute guarantee that the supporters want this gene to be. If someone produced low levels of monoamine oxidase A, there's a solution to that problem. These studies also say it would be premature to speculate about the 2-repeat allele to explain any crime trend because more data is needed. I'll list my sources in the description box. If someone has a different interpretation of these studies than me, we can talk about it. So no, this isn't the criminal gene that they were looking for. Do I believe genes influence our behavior? Yes, of course I do. I see them as biological influences on our behavior, but not absolutes. I believe everyone is born with roughly the same potential to be intelligent. That's the biological component. But the environment will determine whether or not you will use your intelligence at its highest potential. That's the environmental component. Intelligence in this context means being able to function cognitively in the society you inhabit. Then other people might have their own definition of intelligence. So this, of course, is under the assumption that you weren't born with a birth defect that hinders your cognitive abilities. Our genes influence our behavior, but the environment we live in can also determine whether or not we will act on those influences. That's what I mean when I say it doesn't work in absolutes. I hope everyone understands that I'm talking about behavior here. It's very easy to misunderstand my point. The influences vary from weak to strong depending on the biology of the individual. I don't think it's just this one gene that serves as the basis for certain actions. That is simplifying the complex interactions of our biology, and I don't think these people understand how our society can also influence our behavior. We have morality and a biological component that goes with it, a conscience. Most of us have the biological urge to have sex, but many of us won't rape someone if you're not willing to go against your morality. I believe most people know rape is wrong even if some do it anyways. We'll find another consenting adult. Yes, women are capable of rape too, although I don't think it's as likely as men who rape. What stops us from acting on our biological urges is the complex interaction of societal expectations and our biology. I can kill someone who stole something from me, but I won't because the consequences are not worth it. The cons outweigh the pros, and therefore, I won't kill or harm the person. I'll just call the police instead of taking the law into my own hands. The environment that the person lives in and the people the person associates themselves with can also influence their behavior. This poses some interesting questions. This is controversial, I know. I don't think a mentally ill person should go to prison if they kill someone. They didn't really have a choice because they aren't well. I believe they should be treated instead. Where would you draw the line between a mentally ill person and a person who produced low levels of monoamine oxidase A? Or would you lump them both together? If you lump them both together, the people with low levels of monoamine oxidase A should be treated instead of being sent to prison, since the supporters of race and intelligence think the person don't have much of a choice in their actions. You're basically saying there's a biological reason and that it wasn't their fault as to why they committed a crime. You should start advocating that those with low levels of monoamine oxidase A shouldn't be sent to prison. That is, of course, if you're not a racial nationalist who wants the races to be separate. Or do you think both of them should just go to jail? Me, personally, I believe the people who produce low levels of monoamine oxidase A have the cognitive ability to choose their actions. I believe most people experienced high emotional states in their lives, but even then, we still had the ability to choose our actions. We know what is lawful and what is unlawful. If the person isn't taught how to manage their emotions, they might not care about the consequences and harm someone anyways. Mentally ill people are a bit limited in that area. That's something to think about. Oh, for those who are being honest and interpret the studies for what they are actually saying, having the 2 repeat and 3 repeat alleles increases probability for someone to use aggression instead of it being an absolute guarantee, the warrior gene defense has been used to lower someone's prison sentence. That's a good thing if you think that gene influenced people's behavior so much and or consider it worth bringing up to explain the causes of crime. I have little reason to believe these people think those with low levels of monoamine oxidase A have a choice in their actions or believe the environment can cause them to commit a crime, because none of them mention anything about the environment. They all just stick to genetic reasons and leave it at that.